Hello to fantasy reality. And this episode, we're going to talk about orcs and why they fight. And they've been an interesting one. Because usually they're depicted as being green, they are to be depicted as being violent, always fighting, and in many cases usually tend to be in the service of the big bad. Although there are exceptions to this stereotype where they are a proud and noble warrior race who basically found themselves on the wrong side because they had bad information. You can see this one in Warcraft, where technically they are aliens from another world that come through the portal, this portal to the world of Azarath, and because they're told, because their world is dying because of forces that occurred on their planet, and they needed to move. And you got, and for the most part, you got, well, basically their commander, at the very least, he's taking advice from a guy who is, shall we say, evil incarnate, or basically evil incarnate as far as they're concerned. At least when they find out about it, and in time when the orcs find out about this deception, for lack of a better word, they're not too happy. And of course, part of the problem is they're basically on the verge of defeat by the local human forces and their allies. And, well, if you ever played Warcraft 3, you kind of know the eventual result. You got that guy named Thrall who basically is like, okay guys, we need to do this, and revitalizes the spirit of the Orcish people, gets them to flee from the lands of Lordaeron because of what's coming, and he's been informed to get out of there pronto. And but Thrall's one guy, and you got, of course, you got a bunch of different types of orcs throughout the whole of fantasy. One series I've recently read is the Inheritance series, or the Alugazia by Christopher Polano. If you've ever read it, it's a great series. Kind of more than a few shout-outs to Star Wars, and some people can argue whether or not it's any good or not, but we all have our likes and dislikes. But let's get to But the orcs in this story, they're not called orcs. They're called Urgols. They're humanoids, stand about 7 feet tall, and they got horns that, well, they're a decent length. And they're an interesting race, and learn more about them. And you basically, originally, when you read about them, they're the bad. They work for the big bad. They're the henchmen. And at first, you don't like them. But then as you read more about them in the second book, you find out about this group who comes over to the heroes like, listen, we are willing to employ our services in your name. Because what had happened is they found out that the big bad had told one big lie to them, and the Orcs, they didn't like that. And and basically they sided with the rebellion afterwards. Or at least a good number of them. There's probably more than a few that they're still evil, but still, when you think about it, turns out they're not really that evil. Just misunderstood. And basically I'm kind of equating them to orcs because of their the general depiction of them in the story. And one thing that's kind of common with all orcs, no matter what series you read, is they have this tendency to go out and seek battle, seek confrontation, seek a fight. Why do they do that? Well, I think I figured out a good reason. It involves them trying to find a girlfriend. Now, why would them going out on these fights be a reason for them to get a girlfriend? Well, with the Orcs from the Inheritance series, their culture was you need to get in battle, and you need to kill 3 enemies. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to mate. I might be wrong about the number, but they still had to kill a certain number of enemies in order to be allowed to take a mate. And this idea could essentially apply to orcs in general, or something similar. I mean, maybe they don't need to go out in a fight, but let's look at it in terms of humans, shall we say, and how our culture is. And let's face it, how many of you men, when you were young, you went on a sports team? Soccer, football, baseball, basketball. Let's hear. There's a lot of wrestling. You know, you wanted to be doing something that was athletic, that says, I am strong. Look at me. I am Adonis. And ladies, let's face it. How many of you like the guy that had the muscles? How many of you like the guy who was able to run across that entire football field carrying that pigskin, dashing 50 yards to the touchdown? Let's face it. Us guys, we want to be that guy. And girls, I'm quite certain that you want that guy. So, maybe it's something similar for orcs. They want to prove themselves to the female orcs. So, they go out, they get into a fight, 100 enemy fighters over here. I'll take these guys on. And of course, you come back. It's like, that guy took out 100 enemy fighters and killed 30 of them single-handed. Or however the exaggeration works. And basically, maybe the females, they hear about that, it's like, ooh, that sounds like someone I want in a mate. They give me strong children. And let's face it, if you're the chieftain's daughter, you're not going to want to pick some scrawny guy to bear your kids. No, you're going to pick someone who's strong, who's tough, who can take care of business and can protect the tribe. That's the guy you want. So, right there's motivation for an orc to prove himself to be a good fighter. Because, I mean, let's say this particular orc, he leads these raids because he wants to marry the chieftain's daughter. And so, he goes out and he proves himself. It's like, look at that many enemy. Look, this here is the leader of the enemy that I just defeated. I don't think he has anything to say now. Will you be mine? And well, let's face it, even if Chieftain's daughter says, no, you're not for me, there's still going to be the other females who are looking and going, he look good, you look great. Well, maybe he doesn't get the chieftain's daughter, but he's going to be in the company of a couple of lovely females. Lovely being a matter of perspective, of course. And so they can at least say, your daughter, your father, they get the lovely ladies, the females, sometime later, they're telling the children about how great the fighter their father is, or was, about how he killed this many enemy in battle, about all these battle trophies he's got on the wall, and all that sort of crazy stuff. Nothing else is worth thinking on. You know, that basically the reason that orcs got into a fight was because they wanted to prove themselves worthy, because they wanted to eventually pass on their line. And the best way to do that was prove yourself in battle. The females take a liking to the guy, and sometime later, that orc, he is one proud pup. Look at you, look at his tusks. They look like mine. And that right there's a good motivation for an orc to want to go into a fight. Because they want to prove themselves, because they want to get acquainted with a lovely female, because that's one way to make sure that your genetics carry on through the next generation. Of course, that's just one idea. There's probably others, but like I said, the reason why they got into a fight is because they want to get a mate. They got to prove themselves in a battle. Once you do that, they can acquire a mate, and sometime later, they have a baby. Well, that's it for this episode of Fantasy Reality. See you later.